Okay, let's put one of these GPS things together. This is the circuit board as shipped. All I've done is given it a wipe off with some acetone on a bit of paper towel. Methylated spirits will work just as well. I have a 1mm tip soldering iron, and the first thing I'm going to do is go around and just tin one pad of each of the components that we're going to load onto the board, like that, with about that much solder. The first piece to put on the board, aside from the resonator there, which I've preloaded onto the board because it was a bit of a tricky soldering job, and I ended up using hot air tools to use it. So to get it to go on, I'll specify one that's a bit easier to put on using ordinary soldering irons in the future, but I'll just put that on, and I will just put it on, make sure I've got enough heat going into that pad, and that one's done. Now I get the solder, I just work. Feel free when you're doing this to rotate the board around. I'm just holding it in this orientations because I don't have 3 arms to hold the video camera as well. There we are, and that's on. The next part is the 1 microfarad cap. That's labelled 1 UF on the little part sheet, and he will go on there. Notice I'm using fine tipped tweezers. These are really important. Just make him lie down. Let's solder the other side of him. We'll just get some heat in there and solder the other side of him, like that. Alright. If you're worried about your soldering skills at this point, put a little dab of solder there, a little dab of solder there, put 5 volts, a positive line on that one and the negative line on that one, and then with your multimeter measure the voltage at that point just there, between the ground and that point just there. You should see 3.3 volts or thereabouts. It's a good thing, it's a good idea to do that whenever you're building a circuit anyway. Put the voltage regulator in first, make sure you've got the right voltage coming out of it, and then you know you're not going to cook anything else. Okay, the next part we'll put on is the 0.1 cap, and we'll put him on before the microcontroller because he's quite close to the microcontroller, and this way we'll have plenty of room to work around it. It's not a bad idea to work on top of a towel or something like that. That way when you drop a part or it goes flying off the tweezers, it doesn't go skipping away across the top of the bench. Here we go, and that part's on. And while I'm here I'll just tin that pad and a little spot next to it. Okay, that's done. The last part for this board is then the microcontroller, which goes on with a little dimple in the top left corner, like that. I like to do him by holding with my fingers. And again, we're just reworking that one little dab of solder, getting him lined up as best we can on top of the pads. Now we're a bit too far over. Lining him up, nudging him a bit more. Just keep working it until you're really happy that it's lined up on the pads. And then, forgive my cold, I'm still getting over it. And then I'll do the opposite corner pad. Check it again. Yeah, that's good enough. It's not perfect, but. And then I will go around, and this is a good example of where it's really advantageous to be rotating the boards. I suspect I've got a bit of a short up there, and I'll show you how to deal with that. If you do short a couple of pins out, it's not the end of the world. The technique here is heat first, solder second, and you really don't need much solder. I've actually put a bit too much on those. Heat first, solder second. Not enough heat, too much solder. Now I'll work up this side. Take your time. Leave the iron set to a sensible temperature, like 350 or below, and you won't have any problems. Okay, they're soldered. Now I do think I've got a bit of a short in the board just across these two pins. So I'm just going to go in there with this desoldering braid and just wick off some of the excessive amounts of solder that I've put on. Yes, right, I did deliberately put too much on so I could do this later. And you can see that's a light but good solder joint. I might just do that to a few more of the joints, a few more of the ones here that I've put too much on. For a really fine pitch component, I will offer them solder them this way, which is just to pour heaps of solder on and then get in and wick it all off afterwards. If you've got a heavier iron, this is a quicker and better process. And you can see they're actually looking like quite neat, nice solder joints now. And that's the board assembled, really. I'll issue a picture with this on it, but the pinouts are basically the big copper area around the outside is ground. That's power in, or the battery line from the radio. That's a ground. That's 3.3 volts out to the GPS. That's data in from the GPS. Going this way, that is audio out. So that connects to the microphone that you desoldered on the radio. And that one connects to the push to talk button on the radio. And that's really all there is to it. So, get stuck into it. Let's see what you can come up with.